The courtroom fell silent as 12-year-old Aisha Brooks stood before the stern judge, clutching her weathered notebook to her chest. Within its pages lay an algorithm with the potential to revolutionize the world. Behind her, Jamal Carter, once a titan of Wall Street, now a disgraced outcast, watched nervously as everything hung in the balance. To understand how a bankrupt millionaire and a homeless girl changed the world against all odds, we must rewind. Jamal Carter had once been untouchable. At 48, the celebrated black venture capitalist had amassed a fortune of over $300 million, graced the covers of Fortune and Forbes, and owned a spectacular mansion in Boston's exclusive Beacon Hill neighborhood. His investment firm, Carter Capital, was the envy of Wall Street, known for backing innovative tech startups before anyone saw their potential. But on a cold December morning, everything changed. Jamal stared at his computer screen in disbelief as his company's stock plummeted 97% in a single hour. His white business partners, led by Victor Langston, had orchestrated a financial coup, transferring assets, manipulating records, and spreading rumors of fraud that sent investors fleeing. By nightfall, Jamal Carter was no longer a financial titan. He was a ruined man facing potential criminal charges for irregularities he hadn't committed. The next few months passed in a blur of humiliation. His mansion was seized by creditors. His wife of 15 years, Elaine Nguyen, left a note on their Italian marble kitchen counter. "I married a success, not a failure." Former associates mockingly sent him job listings for security guards and janitors with notes like, "Maybe this is more your speed now." The newspapers that had once celebrated his rise now chronicled his fall with thinly veiled racial undertones. One particularly stinging headline read, "Carter's natural financial abilities questioned," suggesting his success had been a diversity initiative rather than earned through talent. With his assets frozen and reputation destroyed, Jamal moved into a run-down one-bedroom apartment in Roxbury, a predominantly black neighborhood he'd once donated to but never visited. The walls were thin, the plumbing unreliable, and the building smelled perpetually of cabbage and cigarettes. Each morning, Jamal woke, stared at the water-stained ceiling, and wondered if today would be the day he found the courage to end it all. Depression settled over him like a heavy blanket, muffling the world and making each step feel like wading through concrete. On a brutal January evening, with snow falling heavily, Jamal bundled up in his only remaining designer coat and wandered to Franklin Park. The cold bit at his face as he contemplated the frozen pond as a final resting place. Then he heard it, the soft scratching of pencil on paper coming from beneath a stone bridge. Curious, Jamal peered into the shadows and saw a small figure hunched over a notebook. A young black girl, no more than 9 or 10, was solving complex equations by the dim light of a flashlight. She wore mismatched mittens, a coat several sizes too large, and had her hair in uneven braids. "Are you okay?" Jamal asked, startling her. She clutched the notebook to her chest. "I'm fine," she replied with a maturity that belied her years. "Just working on some problems." Jamal sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "It's too cold to be out here doing homework. Where do you live?" She hesitated before answering. "Harbor Light Shelter, since my grandma died last month." She introduced herself as Aisha Brooks and explained she came to the park when the shelter was too loud to concentrate. Despite his own dire situation, something about Aisha's determination stirred a spark in Jamal, a sense of purpose he thought had died with his fortune. The next day, Jamal visited the Harbor Light Shelter, a dilapidated former office building housing 87 homeless individuals and families. Social workers eyed him suspiciously as he inquired about Aisha. "What's your interest in her?" demanded Janet Cooper, a stern-faced woman. "A well-dressed black man suddenly interested in a young girl raises questions," Jamal explained, their encounter and his concern about Aisha working in freezing temperatures. "I'd like to help her," he said simply. The shelter administrator, Barbara Thompson, a white woman, made little effort to hide her disdain. "We see this all the time," she said loudly, "your kind sticking together. But good intentions don't matter if you can't provide stability." Her emphasis on "your kind" wasn't lost on Jamal, whose face burned with shame and anger. Despite having no resources, no mansion, no connections, Jamal found himself filling out fostering paperwork. The process was invasive, humiliating, and rife with subtle racism. Background checks revealed his financial ruin, prompting scrutiny. "Why would someone in your position take on this responsibility?" questioned the family court judge. A.I.D., white man who peered at Jamal over reading glasses with suspicion. Former colleagues were incredulous. "Have you lost your mind?" asked Thomas Green, a banking executive. "You can barely feed yourself and now you want to take in some random shelter kid. Is this a publicity stunt?" The local press ran headlines like, "Failed financier's last investment, homeless child and Carter seeks redemption through charity case." Victor Langston, the architect of Jamal's downfall, was quoted in the Boston Globe. "Jamal always had a flair for the dramatic. One has to question whether this child is being used as a prop for a man desperate to rebrand himself, or worse, what other motivations a single man might have." The insinuation made Jamal ill, but Aisha's quiet determination awakened a protectiveness that outweighed the ridicule. Against all odds, the fostering arrangement was approved, likely because no one else wanted a difficult older child, and the overburdened system was happy to offload responsibility. With nothing but determination and the last shreds of his dignity, Jamal Carter became Aisha Brooks's guardian. Their first weeks together were awkward. Jamal's small apartment felt cramped with Aisha's presence, though she took up little space. She was unnervingly quiet, watching Jamal with wary eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. She kept her few belongings in a backpack, never fully unpacking, as if expecting to be sent away. At night, Jamal heard her breathing change whenever he passed the living room couch where she slept, her body tensing as if preparing for danger. "You're safe here," he told her repeatedly, but the words seemed to bounce off her invisible shield of distrust. The breakthrough came unexpectedly 3 weeks into their arrangement. Jamal woke at night for a glass of water and noticed Aisha's couch empty. Panic surged until he spotted light from the hallway closet. Opening it slowly, he found Aisha huddled inside with her notebook and flashlight, surrounded by stockpiles of cereal, crackers, and apples she'd squirreled away. "I'm sorry," she whispered, eyes wide with fear. "I won't take any more food." The realization hit Jamal like a blow. This child had been so hungry in her short life that hoarding food was instinctual. "Aisha," he said gently, sitting on the hallway floor, "you never have to hide food here. You can eat whenever you're hungry. This is your home now." The word home seemed to confuse her, but she nodded cautiously. Jamal helped her return the food to the kitchen, organizing it in a cabinet. "This is the Aisha cabinet," he declared. "Everything in here is yours, anytime you want it." That night marked a shift in their relationship, though trust came in increments. Jamal discovered Aisha's survival habits, noting exit routes in every room, wearing multiple layers of clothing indoors, washing her few possessions nightly in the bathroom sink. But he also discovered something remarkable. Aisha wasn't just doing homework in her notebook, she was creating complex mathematical systems far beyond elementary school level. One night, finding her working by flashlight again, Jamal asked about the equations filling page after page. Aisha snapped the notebook shut. "It's nothing," she said defensively. "Just some problems I'm figuring out." When Jamal pressed gently, she grew agitated. "People always take things from me when they know what I can do," she said. "Then they don't want me anymore once they've got what they wanted." The statement, delivered with the certainty of lived experience, broke Jamal's heart. Meanwhile, his own struggles mounted. With his reputation in tatters, finding employment was nearly impossible. He applied for dozens of jobs: accounting clerk, administrative assistant, call center representative, only to be rejected with veiled references to his situation and character concerns. At one humiliating interview for a bank teller position, the hiring manager, a young white man, leaned back and asked, "Weren't you one of those affirmative action hires who couldn't handle real business when things got tough?" Jamal swallowed his rage. "No, sir. I built my company from nothing and ran it successfully for 15 years before it was taken from me." The man smirked. "That's not what I heard. We'll be in touch." They never called. To make ends meet, Jamal took evening janitorial work, night shifts at a 24-hour convenience store, and weekend moving jobs, anything that paid cash and didn't require extensive background checks. The physical toll was immense, but the knowledge that these jobs barely covered rent and groceries was worse. He'd gone from flying private jets to worrying about bus fare in less than a year. Aisha faced her own challenges at the predominantly white Jackson Elementary School. Though placed in a fourth-grade classroom based on her age, her mathematical abilities far exceeded the curriculum. Her teacher, Ms. Rivera, was supportive but overwhelmed with 30 students. The math teacher, Mr. Peterson, was less accommodating. When Aisha solved a week's worth of problems in minutes, he accused her of cheating. "No one just knows these answers," he insisted in front of the class, "especially not someone from your background." Classmates picked up on the adult's prejudices. "Why do you wear the same clothes every day?" asked a girl with pristine blonde braids. "My mom says people from Roxbury are dangerous," whispered another when assigned to work with Aisha. "Is it true your real dad is in prison?" During lunch, Aisha sat alone, eating every crumb on her tray. After 2 weeks of this treatment, her math assignments started coming back marked with C's and D's despite perfect answers. When Jamal questioned her, she shrugged. "Mr. Peterson says I need to show more work. He doesn't believe I can do it in my head." Jamal requested a meeting with the school administration. Seated across from Principal Warner and Mr. Peterson, he presented Aisha's work and asked for an explanation. "Mr. Carter," the principal began condescendingly, "we understand you're new to parenting, but sometimes children need to learn that special treatment isn't always warranted." Jamal interrupted. "She got every answer correct." Mr. Peterson's face reddened. "She couldn't possibly calculate these mentally. No fourth grader can. She must be using some method we're not seeing." "You mean she must be cheating?" Jamal translated. "Because a little black girl from Roxbury couldn't possibly be smarter than you expected." The accusation hung in the air. Principal Warner's tone cooled. "Mr. Carter, we don't appreciate your aggressive approach. Your background doesn't entitle you to make accusations of prejudice whenever your ward is held to standard expectations." Jamal recognized the dismissal in her tone, her crossed arms, her refusal to meet, his eyes. He was being labeled the angry black man who could be ignored despite his measured tone and reasonable concerns. The meeting ended with vague promises to look into the matter that Jamal knew would lead nowhere. That evening, he found Aisha on the fire escape outside their apartment window, tears silently tracking down her face as she gazed at the darkening sky. "Why do they hate us before they even know us?" she asked quietly when Jamal joined her. The question's simplicity and depth left him speechless. How could he explain centuries of prejudice to a child who just wanted to learn? "Some people are afraid of what they don't understand," he finally answered. "And you, Aisha Brooks, are very hard to understand. You're extraordinary." She looked at him skeptically. "Is that good?" "It's wonderful," he assured her. "But it means we have to work twice as hard and be twice as good. It's not fair, but it's reality." Aisha considered this, then said with unexpected firmness, "I'm not going to pretend to be less smart anymore, not for them." Jamal felt a surge of pride. "Good, and I'll have your back every step of the way." Their relationship's breakthrough came unexpectedly that weekend. For a science project, Aisha needed to build a solar system model. Having spent her school years in transient situations, she'd never completed such projects. Jamal pooled their meager resources to buy styrofoam balls, paint, and wire. They spent Saturday transforming their kitchen table into a makerspace, with Jamal holding planets steady while Aisha painted intricate details from memory. "Neptune has 13 moons that we know of," she explained, adding tiny white dots to her blue orb, "and its wind speeds can reach over 1,000 miles per hour." As they worked, something shifted. Aisha's guarded expression gave way to occasional smiles. She corrected Jamal's astronomical facts without hesitation, her confidence emerging. By Sunday evening, when they hung the completed model from the living room ceiling, they stood together, admiring their work. Not as guardian and ward, but as a team. We did good, Jamal said, gently bumping his shoulder against hers. Yeah, Aisha agreed, leaning slightly against him in a gesture that felt monumental in its trust. We did. As winter melted into spring, Jamal noticed patterns in Aisha's behavior beyond her mathematical homework. She counted everything: steps between destinations, grocery store items, birds on telephone wires. She calculated their grocery bill, tax included, before reaching checkout. On the bus, she mumbled numbers, calculating fuel efficiency based on passengers, stops, and distance. Most intriguing were her notebooks, now filling a shelf, filled with equations about energy and light. One evening, as Aisha worked at the kitchen table while Jamal prepared pasta with jarred sauce, he noticed her frustration as she erased an equation. Stuck on a homework problem? He asked casually. Aisha snorted. This isn't homework. Mr. Peterson is still teaching the class long division. She hesitated, then added, I'm trying to solve something about energy transfer, but I can't get the efficiency ratio right. Jamal set down his spoon and peered over her shoulder. The page was filled with equations reminiscent of advanced physics he'd glimpsed in university, but these approached the problem from a novel angle. Where did you learn this? He asked carefully. Aisha shrugged. I didn't learn it anywhere. I just see it. See what? Patterns. How energy moves. How it could move better. She tapped her pencil against a section. Right now, when we convert solar energy to electricity, we lose too much. But I think there's a way to capture more using a different semiconductor array that responds to a wider spectrum of light. Jamal sat down slowly, dinner forgotten. Aisha, this is advanced theoretical physics. She looked up, suddenly vulnerable. Is it wrong? I don't have books to check my work. I don't know if it's wrong, Jamal admitted. This is beyond what most adults understand, but I know someone who might. After dinner, once Aisha was asleep on the couch, she still refused the bedroom, preferring to see the door. Jamal called Dr. Sandra Park, a research colleague from his MIT days, now a professor of applied physics. She was one of the few associates who hadn't shunned him after his fall. Jamal Carter, she answered with surprise. I'd almost given up on hearing from you. After awkward pleasantries, Jamal explained Aisha's equations. I know it sounds far-fetched, but I've never seen anything like it. This child intuitively understands concepts that take others years to master. Dr. Park was skeptical, but intrigued enough to meet them that weekend. On Saturday morning, Jamal and Aisha took the bus to MIT's campus. Aisha grew quiet, clutching her notebook tightly. These people are real scientists, she whispered. What if they laugh at me? Jamal squeezed her shoulder. Then they'd be fools. Real scientists recognize genuine insight no matter where it comes from. Dr. Park welcomed them with professional courtesy, though Jamal noted her eyes widen slightly at Aisha's worn clothes and his faded shirt, a far cry from the designer suits he'd once worn to guest lectures. She offered water in paper cups and suggested Aisha might like to look at books while the adults talked. Actually, Jamal said firmly, Aisha is the reason we're here. I'd like her to show you her work directly. With encouragement, Aisha opened her notebook and explained her energy conversion theory. Hesitant at first, her voice grew stronger as she delved into the concepts, her hands animating complex ideas despite her vocabulary's occasional struggle. Dr. Park's expression shifted from polite interest to stunned attention. She interrupted with questions that Aisha answered with confidence. After 30 minutes, Dr. Park stepped out to retrieve reference materials and Jamal overheard her on the phone. Jack, you need to see this. No, now. Trust me. Within an hour, Aisha was surrounded by 3 physics professors and a graduate student, all watching in amazement as she solved problems on a whiteboard. The coefficient needs adjustment when you factor in temperature variance, she explained, adding notations with casual ease. When Dr. Park stepped out again, Jamal followed her. Well, he asked. Dr. Park shook her head in amazement. I've never seen anything like it. She has an intuitive grasp of quantum principles that most doctoral students struggle with. Her energy conversion theory is unorthodox, but the math checks out. If her calculations are correct, this could increase solar energy efficiency by 60 to 70%. Pride swelled in Jamal's chest, but Dr. Park's next words doused it like cold water. Of course, we'll need to bring in our research team. The university has protocols for working with exceptional talents, especially minors. There would be paperwork, arrangements. What are you suggesting? Jamal interrupted. Dr. Park blinked, as if the answer were obvious. With proper development and university resources, this could be groundbreaking. We'd need to establish proper credit with the university as the primary. You want to take her work, Jamal clarified, tension rising. Jamal, be reasonable. She's a little black girl from the streets. She needs institutional backing to be taken seriously, and frankly, given your situation, you're hardly in a position to develop this technology yourself. As they returned to the office, Jamal overheard two professors near the water cooler. Incredible find. Park will get a major grant out of this, said one. But how do we handle the optics? We can't have the public face of this breakthrough be a homeless kid. Maybe we list her as a special contributor in the acknowledgments, suggested the other. And what about Carter? He's toxic in the business world. We need to minimize his involvement. Jamal's jaw tightened. In the office, he found Aisha cornered by an enthusiastic graduate student firing questions at her. Her eyes were wide, her breathing shallow, clear signs of anxiety the researcher missed or ignored. I think that's enough for today, Jamal announced, gathering Aisha's notebooks. But we've only just begun, protested a professor. There are so many tests we need to run, questions to explore. We'll be in touch, Jamal replied, guiding Aisha toward the door. As they left, Aisha's small hand slipped into his, a first. They wanted to take it from me, she said quietly. Just like you said people would. Yes, Jamal admitted. But we're not going to let them. On the bus ride home, Aisha experienced a panic attack, hyperventilating with silent tears as she rocked in her seat. At their apartment, she revealed what triggered it. I heard one of them in the hallway. He said, "It's amazing what these urban children can accomplish when given proper guidance. Like I'm a zoo animal who learned a trick." Her eyes burned. I don't want them to have my work. It's the only thing that's really mine. That night, Jamal made a decision. The world had taken nearly everything from him, and now it wanted Aisha's possession. He wouldn't let that happen. We're going to develop your technology ourselves, he told her over boxed macaroni and cheese. I don't know how yet, but your name will be first, your contribution recognized, and no one will exploit you on my watch. Aisha studied him with intense scrutiny. You really mean that, don't you? With every fiber of my being, Jamal replied. In that moment, something shifted, a deeper trust, a shared purpose, a fragile but growing sense of family. News traveled quickly in academic circles. Within a week of their MIT visit, a small article in the university's science newsletter mentioned an extraordinary young prodigy with innovative photovoltaic energy theories. Though Aisha wasn't named, enough details were included that Jamal knew others would connect the dots. His fears were confirmed when a reporter called about the homeless math genius, mentored by disgraced financier Jamal Carter. The resulting Boston Herald article portrayed Aisha as a curiosity, math whiz lives in Roxbury apartment, rather than a legitimate innovator. Experts questioned whether a child, particularly one without formal training, could develop groundbreaking theories. A sidebar on Jamal's financial collapse implied he was using Aisha's abilities for redemption or profit. Aisha read the article, then set it aside without comment. But Jamal noticed her pencil pressing so hard it tore through her notebook's pages as she solved equations that day. The publicity brought unexpected attention. 3 days later, Jamal opened their apartment door to find Victor Langston, the man who'd orchestrated his ruin, holding an expensive leather briefcase and a practiced smile. Jamal, he said smoothly as if they were friends. May I come in? I have a proposition that could benefit us both. Every instinct screamed to slam the door, but curiosity won. Jamal let Victor in, watching him catalog their modest surroundings with disdain. Aisha, working at the kitchen table, tensed, sensing Jamal's discomfort. "Ah, this must be the young genius," Victor said, extending a hand. Aisha stared at it, then returned to her equations. Victor chuckled. "Focused. That's good." He turned to Jamal. "Can we speak privately?" "Anything you have to say you can say in front of Aisha," Jamal replied. "This concerns her too." Victor's smile tightened. "Very well, I'll be direct. My company, Langston Innovations, is prepared to offer substantial resources to develop the energy technology your young ward has conceived. We have laboratories, scientists, manufacturing capabilities, and connections to bring this to market. Quickly." He opened his briefcase and removed a glossy folder. "We're offering a generous package. A full college scholarship for Aisha at any institution she chooses, a housing allowance to move to better accommodations, and a consulting fee for your involvement, Jamal." The subtext was clear. Jamal would be a consultant, not a partner, and Aisha a curiosity, not the primary inventor. Jamal took the folder without opening it. "And the ownership of the intellectual property?" Victor waved dismissively. "Standard arrangement. Langston Innovations would hold the patents with appropriate acknowledgement of Aisha's contribution." "What percentage?" Jamal pressed. Victor's smile faltered. "These details can be negotiated, but typically, for minors and concepts requiring substantial development, the originating idea might command 3 to 5% of net profits." 3 to 5%, Jamal repeated, "for what could be the most significant energy breakthrough of the decade." Victor leaned forward. "Jamal, let's be realistic. You're living in a rundown apartment in Roxbury, working minimum wage jobs. You have no resources to develop this independently, and your reputation makes you toxic to investors." His voice softened patronizingly. "This is a lifeline I'm throwing you. Take it." Jamal handed the folder back. "Thank you, but we'll need time to consider our options." Victor's facade cracked. "Don't be a fool, Jamal. You know I can make things happen, and I can make things difficult." He glanced at Aisha. "It would be a shame if Child Protective Services received concerns about your ability to provide adequate care for a foster child." The threat hung like a poisonous cloud. Aisha, pretending not to listen, looked up sharply. Jamal stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "I think you should leave now, Victor." At the door, Victor turned. "Remember, Jamal, you've already lost everything once. Consider whether you want to risk what little you have left." After he left, Aisha asked quietly, "Who was that man?" "Someone who taught me a valuable lesson about trusting the wrong people," Jamal replied. "He's the main reason I lost my company." Aisha processed this. "He wants to steal my work too, doesn't he?" "Yes," Jamal answered honestly, "and he's very good at taking what isn't his." The threat wasn't idle. 3 days later, Child Protective Services called, informing Jamal that anonymous concerns had been raised about his fostering arrangement. A social worker, Heather Davis, would conduct a home evaluation the next day. Jamal spent the evening frantically cleaning their apartment, acutely aware of its shortcomings. Aisha watched silently before saying, "They're going to take me away, aren't they?" The resignation in her voice broke Jamal's heart. "Not if I can help it," he promised, though his confidence was more performance than reality. Heather Davis arrived at 9 a.m., a white woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a clipboard. Her inspection felt predetermined. "1 bedroom for 2 people of opposite genders," she noted, writing, "Less than ideal." "I sleep on the couch," Jamal explained. "Aisha has the bedroom." Davis raised an eyebrow. "And the bathroom? Only 1, I see." "Yes, but we have a schedule and privacy rules." She nodded without comment, noting, "The apartment's size, limited food in the refrigerator, and lack of separate study space." When interviewing them separately, Jamal emphasized their emotional bond and Aisha's improved stability, but Davis fixated on material factors: his irregular work hours, financial precariousness, the neighborhood's crime rate. Later, Jamal learned the complaint came from Victor's office. with implications about exploiting Aisha's intellectual abilities and questions about their living arrangement. The family court judge, connected to Victor's company, scheduled a custody hearing for the next month, building a case to remove Aisha from Jamal's care. The night after receiving the hearing notice, Jamal sat at the kitchen table long after Aisha slept, trying to formulate a plan. A noise from the living room caught his attention. "I know you're awake," he said gently. "Come sit with me." Aisha patted over in mismatched socks, her expression vulnerable. "I heard Victor's lawyer called today when you were in the shower," she admitted. "They offered you money if you give me up, $50,000. Jamal felt ill. "You weren't supposed to hear that." "But it's true, isn't it?" she pressed. "Yes," he acknowledged, "but I would never." "Everyone leaves eventually," she interrupted, her voice flat. "My mom when I was a baby. My grandma died. Foster families sent me back when I got too difficult. Why would you be different?" Without waiting for an answer, she grabbed her backpack and darted for the door. Jamal lunged after her, but she was quick. By the time he reached the building's entrance, she had vanished into the rainy night. Panic seized him as he ran through Roxbury's streets, calling her name. The neighborhood wasn't safe for adults at night, let alone a small girl. For 3 hours, Jamal searched the community center, the closed library, the park where they'd met, and the shelter where she'd lived. He called the police, but they were indifferent when he explained she was his foster child, not his biological daughter. "She'll probably turn up by morning," the desk sergeant said. "These kids usually do." The racial undertones of "these kids" weren't lost on Jamal. Desperation mounting, Jamal remembered Aisha mentioning that she and her grandmother had lived near Franklin Cemetery before the shelter. On instinct, he headed there, scaling the locked gate despite the no trespassing signs. The cemetery was vast and dark, but a pinprick of light led him to a modest headstone where Aisha sat cross-legged, her flashlight illuminating the name Eleanora Brooks, beloved grandmother. She didn't look up as Jamal approached, continuing to trace the letters on the stone. "She was someone who never thought I was weird," Aisha said quietly. "She used to say my brain was a gift, not a problem." Jamal sat beside her on the damp grass, respecting her space. She was right. Rain drizzled around them, but neither moved. "I heard what they're saying about you," Aisha continued, "that you're using me, that you only want my ideas to get rich again." She looked at him, eyes searching. "Is that true?" Jamal held her gaze. "Aisha, before I met you, I was ready to end my life. I had nothing left, no purpose, no future, no hope. You didn't just give me your ideas. You gave me a reason to keep going." His voice cracked. "If they take you away, I'll fight to get you back, not because of your brilliant mind, though it is extraordinary, but because you've become the family I thought I'd never have." His raw honesty reached her. Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time Aisha reached out, burying her face against his shoulder. Jamal held her gently as her small body shook with silent sobs. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I don't want to go back into the system." "I know," he soothed. "I can't promise what the court will decide, but I promise I'll never stop trying to protect you and your work. We're in this together now." They stayed at the cemetery until the rain stopped, then walked home hand in hand, soaked but stronger in their resolve. Whatever challenges came next, they would face them as a unit, an unlikely family cemented by choice. An eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday, stating that due to noise complaints and suspected commercial activities, their lease would terminate in 30 days. Jamal knew this was Victor's doing. They were quiet neighbors, and the only commercial activity was Aisha's theoretical work. The timing, 2 weeks before their custody hearing, was no coincidence. Rather than panic, Jamal felt an unexpected calm. Each attack strengthened his resolve. "We need to develop your prototype before the hearing," he told Aisha over oatmeal and their last bananas. "It's the only way to prove the value of your work and show I'm not exploiting you." Aisha looked skeptical. "We don't have equipment, labs, or materials. And you said no one would fund us because of your reputation." Jamal smiled grimly. Then we'll have to be creative. That afternoon, Jamal pawned his last valuable possession, a Patek Philippe watch that had escaped creditors, tucked in an old sock drawer. It brought $4,800, far below its value, but enough for basic components and a used computer for simulations. They converted their apartment into a makeshift laboratory. The kitchen table became a workbench, the sink a cleaning station for components. Jamal cleared the hall closet for shelving to store materials. The living room was rearranged for a desk with the computer. Their landlord would have been apoplectic, but with eviction looming, they had nothing to lose. Space limitations soon became apparent. Neighbors complained about odors when Aisha treated silicon for a solar cell component. The apartment's electrical system couldn't handle the equipment needed to test energy conversion rates. The eviction countdown meant they'd soon have nowhere to work. Salvation came from Jamal Washington, director of the Roxbury Community Center, who'd noticed Jamal and Aisha using the center's library computers. After conversations, Jamal Carter cautiously explained their project. Rather than skepticism, Jamal Washington offered the center's basement storage room. It's not much, he admitted, showing them the space, but it has separate electrical circuits, running water, and a loading door for equipment. And most importantly, Victor Langston has no influence here. The basement was dusty and cluttered, but Jamal and Aisha transformed it into a functional workspace over a weekend. They salvaged tables, installed the computer in a clean corner, and created testing stations with repurposed shelving. Jamal Washington helped run electrical lines and installed a fan in the window well for ventilation. With their new workspace, Jamal and Aisha established a routine. After school and Jamal's day jobs, they met at the community center, working until late evening. Aisha refined her calculations while Jamal, drawing on university engineering basics, built physical components based on her specifications. They scavenged parts from electronics recycling centers, adapted everyday materials, and purchased only essentials with their dwindling funds. Ingenuity born of necessity led to innovations. When they couldn't afford specialized containers for chemical processes, Aisha discovered that arranging kitchen containers in specific patterns created the needed reaction chambers. Unable to buy precision measurement tools, Jamal repurposed second-hand medical devices. As word spread, the community contributed. An electrician offered wiring advice, a high school science teacher brought discarded lab equipment, and a retired engineer reviewed their progress, offering suggestions. One evening, while transporting components from a surplus sale, a police cruiser pulled up. Two white officers stepped out, hands on their weapons. "We've had reports of suspicious activity," one said, eyeing their boxes. "What's in the containers?" Jamal explained they'd purchased the items legally, offering the receipt. The officer barely glanced at it. "Looks like a lot of electronic equipment. Where are you taking this?" The questioning lasted 15 uncomfortable minutes, the officer's disbelief evident. When Jamal mentioned an energy conversion prototype, one snorted. "Right, you're building some special invention in a community center basement. Going to make you rich?" The situation escalated when a radio call described a male suspect, black, approximately 6 feet tall, a description fitting thousands. "Turn around and put your hands on the wall," an officer demanded. "Why?" Jamal asked, confused. "Hands on the wall now." The officer drew his weapon. Jamal complied. "Aisha, go stand by the cruiser," he said calmly, not wanting her to witness what might happen. But Aisha froze, eyes wide with terror, as the officer forced Jamal to the ground, knee on his back, while the other searched their boxes. "It's just computer parts," the searching officer admitted, sounding disappointed. "Everything matches the receipt." They let them go with a warning about suspicious activities after dark, as if being black with electronics was a crime. Jamal was left with scraped palms and a bruised face, but the psychological impact on Aisha was worse. That night, she woke screaming from a nightmare, convinced Jamal had been shot. For 3 nights she refused to sleep, keeping watch as if her vigilance could protect him. The trauma manifested in her work. Her equations became erratic, her concentration fractured. Jamal tried to reassure her, but the fear lodged deep. I can't lose you too, she whispered at 3 a.m. one night. You're the only person who believes in me. The incident had an unexpected positive outcome. Someone recorded the police interaction, and the video circulated online. The disproportionate response to a man and child carrying legal electronics resonated with residents who'd faced similar treatment. Curious onlookers became active supporters. A neighborhood watch group escorted them when transporting materials. The community center board extended their basement use indefinitely. Most surprisingly, Dr. Sandra Park reached out after seeing the video. I was horrified by how you were treated, she told Jamal. I've been reflecting on our previous interaction. My approach was problematic. I'd like to help if you're open to it. No university involvement, no claims on the intellectual property, just my expertise. Jamal was cautious but recognized they needed guidance. He agreed to meet Dr. Park at a coffee shop halfway between MIT and Roxbury. Their conversation was frank. Jamal outlined his concerns about exploitation, and Dr. Park acknowledged academia's history of appropriating innovations from marginalized communities. They reached an understanding. Dr. Park would provide technical consultation and access to testing equipment outside university channels, with a written agreement making no claim to Aisha's intellectual property. With Dr. Park's guidance, their progress accelerated. Her connections provided sophisticated equipment through private channels. Her expertise helped Aisha refine complex theoretical aspects. Her validation gave Aisha confidence that her work was groundbreaking. 47 days after starting in the basement, they achieved their first successful energy conversion using Aisha's method. The prototype was crude: wires, modified solar cells, and custom components in a repurposed plastic container. But the meter readings were undeniable. It converted solar energy to electricity at nearly 60% higher efficiency than commercial standards. The basement erupted in cheers. Jamal Washington, Dr. Park, and community supporters who'd gathered to witness the test celebrated. Aisha, usually contained, jumped with excitement before hugging Jamal spontaneously. "We did it," she exclaimed, her face alight. "We actually did it." For the first time since his ruin, Jamal felt the weight of failure lift. They'd created something valuable from nothing but determination and ingenuity, proving Aisha's genius was real and implementable. Most importantly, they'd done it together, strengthening their bond, soon to be tested in court. Word spread quickly in the energy industry. Despite their discretion, rumors circulated about a revolutionary solar technology developed in a Roxbury community center basement. Jamal suspected Dr. Park's occasional use of university equipment had attracted attention. Days after their prototype test, Gerald Hoffman, executive vice president of Sunlight Energy Corporation, called. "Mr. Carter," he began cordially, "I understand you and your ward have developed something interesting in renewable energy. We'd be interested in discussing acquisition options." Jamal had expected this. In his venture capitalist days, he'd made similar calls. "We're not exploring acquisition opportunities," he replied. "But I appreciate your interest." Hoffman's tone cooled. "I'd encourage you to reconsider. The energy sector is complex with regulatory hurdles and patent complications. A small operation like yours would face challenges." The threat was veiled. When Jamal declined again, Hoffman delivered a parting shot. "We've reviewed Ms. Brooks's background and your legal situation regarding her custody. It would be unfortunate if the court determined your fostering was motivated by financial exploitation." 3 days later, they arrived at the community center to find the basement door's lock broken and their workspace ransacked. The prototype was gone, along with Aisha's notebooks containing her latest equations. The computer was stolen, though they'd begun keeping backups on encrypted cloud storage. The violation hit Aisha hard. "They took my notebooks," she repeated, staring at the empty table. For a child who'd owned so little, those notebooks represented her intellectual journey and rare consistent possessions through instability. The police investigation was perfunctory. "Break-ins happen all the time in this neighborhood," an officer shrugged. "Probably looking for electronics to sell for drug money." When Jamal suggested corporate espionage, the officer laughed. "Right. Because big corporations are worried about a science project in a community center basement. The next week brought another blow. Jamal Washington called, his voice tight. The center's primary funding grant is under review. The E-Tier Foundation is concerned about unauthorized use of facilities and liability issues related to scientific experimentation. They're threatening to pull $300,000 in annual funding. The message was clear. Continue hosting their project and the center could lose its budget. Jamal knew they couldn't risk a resource serving hundreds. They packed their remaining equipment and moved it to their apartment, despite the impending eviction. The press, initially indifferent, took interest, but not as Jamal hoped. A technology blog published, "Custody Battle Raises Questions About Child Exploitation in DIY Science Project," quoting anonymous sources suggesting Jamal used Aisha's abilities for gain while providing substandard living conditions. Victor Langston expressed serious concerns about the psychological impact on a child, pushed to perform like a trained prodigy. The article framed Aisha not as an innovator, but as a vulnerable child manipulated by a desperate man. Similar pieces appeared, drawing from the same talking points with subtle racism in headlines like "Urban Youth's Solar Claims," raise eyebrows and references to Aisha as naturally gifted rather than intellectually brilliant, a trope emphasizing innate talent over cognitive achievement. The custody case gained momentum, with the court date moved up due to new concerns about Aisha's welfare. Heather Davis submitted an updated report emphasizing Jamal's financial instability and the inappropriately adult responsibilities placed on Aisha through her energy project, ignoring their emotional bond or Aisha's passion for her work. Jamal's public defender, Sarah Rodriguez, with a crushing caseload, warned him bluntly, "The judge assigned to your case is traditional in his views on family structures. Single men, particularly those with financial difficulties, face an uphill battle in custodial matters." As pressure mounted, Dr. Park delivered concerning news. "There are people watching me," she confided in a public park to avoid eavesdropping. "Someone accessed my campus email, and a colleague mentioned representatives from Langston Innovations and Sunlight Energy asking about my recent research interests." She hesitated. A graduate student who helped with testing equipment was offered a job at double the normal salary, contingent on providing information about solar conversion projects he might have observed. The coordinated effort took a psychological toll. Aisha, usually focused, became anxious, losing weight and picking at meals. She struggled to sleep, waking with nightmares about being taken away or harm coming to Jamal. Her school performance suffered as concentration faltered. Jamal wasn't faring better. The strain of multiple jobs, rebuilding the prototype, fighting the custody battle, and protecting Aisha left him exhausted, with dark circles ringing his eyes, and 20 pounds lost from his lean frame. One evening, over canned soup and crackers, Aisha watched him with a troubled expression. "Maybe we should take their offer," she said quietly. Langston Innovations called again. They said if we give them the technology, they'll drop the custody case and ensure we have enough money to live comfortably. That they'd contacted Aisha directly infuriated Jamal, but he kept his tone gentle. "Is that what you want?" Aisha traced patterns in her soup, not meeting his eyes. "I want us to stay together. I want you to not be so tired. I want—" Her voice caught. "I want things to stop being so hard." Jamal took her hand. "Aisha, look at me." She raised her eyes reluctantly. "What we've created isn't just about solar panels or energy efficiency. It's about proving innovation can come from anywhere, not just fancy labs or privileged people. It's about showing a little girl from a shelter and a man who lost everything can contribute something valuable." He squeezed her hand. "If we give up now, we're letting them win. Not just the technology, but the narrative about who gets to be an inventor, who deserves credit, whose ideas matter." Aisha considered this, then nodded slowly. "Okay. We keep fighting." Her resolution strengthened his. They would face whatever came next together, two unlikely allies against systems designed to exclude them. Family Courtroom 304 was smaller than Jamal imagined. unlike the grand, wood-paneled courtrooms of television dramas. Its beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and uncomfortable benches felt utilitarian. Jamal sat beside Sarah Rodriguez, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Across the aisle, 3 attorneys for the Department of Children and Families arranged papers with practiced efficiency. Aisha was absent. Minors weren't required to attend until called to testify, but her temporary guardian had brought her to the courthouse, keeping her in a waiting area. Judge Raymond Phillips, a white man in his 60s with thinning gray hair, entered. Known for traditional views on family structures and skepticism of unconventional custodial arrangements, his expression betrayed nothing as he reviewed the case file. "Brooks' custody matter," he announced. "I understand. There are significant concerns about the current fostering arrangement." The state's lead attorney, Victoria Bennett, rose. "Yes, Your Honor. We believe there are substantial issues regarding Mr. Carter's suitability as a foster parent to Aisha Brooks. We'll present evidence showing financial instability, inappropriate living conditions, and a pattern of exploitation of the child's intellectual abilities for potential financial gain." Jamal's jaw clenched, but he remained expressionless. Sarah had warned that displays of anger could reinforce negative stereotypes about black men, damaging their case. The parade of witnesses began with Victor Langston, immaculately dressed, in a tailored suit. With practiced sincerity, he expressed concern about his former colleagues' motivations. "Jamal has always been driven by financial opportunities," he testified. "After losing his company, he was desperate for a new venture. I fear he views this child not as a person to nurture, but as an investment to develop." Sarah objected to the speculation, but the damage was done. Judge Phillips nodded along. Heather Davis presented her damaging report, emphasizing the apartment's inadequate size, Jamal's irregular hours, and the concerning focus on Aisha's scientific work. "Children need stability, appropriate boundaries between adult concerns and childhood development, and proper resources," she concluded. "Mr. Carter, despite perhaps good intentions, cannot provide these." She referred to Aisha as the child, a dehumanizing touch Jamal noticed. The most unexpected witness was Elaine Nguyen, Jamal's ex-wife, whom he hadn't seen since she left their mansion. Elegantly dressed and composed, she testified without meeting his eyes. "Jamal was always obsessed with success. Even during our marriage, everything came second to his business ambitions. I can't imagine he's changed. If anything, desperation would intensify those tendencies." Asked if she believed Jamal was exploiting Aisha, Elaine paused theatrically. "I believe Jamal sees opportunities where others see people. Draw your own conclusions." By the lunch recess, Jamal felt the narrative being constructed was far from his lived experience with Aisha. No one mentioned their late-night talks about the stars, how he'd learned to braid her hair via YouTube, their inside jokes, or the trust built through countless small moments. Outside the courthouse, 30 community members had gathered with handmade signs. "Let Aisha stay with Jamal and support Black innovators." Jamal Washington organized the peaceful demonstration. "We couldn't let you fight this alone," he told Jamal during the break. "The community knows who you really are." The support boosted Jamal's spirits, but Sarah cautioned against overconfidence. Judge Phillips isn't likely to be swayed by public opinion. He may view it as pressure on the court. The afternoon began with the state resting its case, confident in Jamal's unsuitability. When Sarah called Dr. Sandra Park, Victoria Bennett objected. "Dr. Park has no direct knowledge of the foster care relationship. Her testimony is irrelevant." Sarah countered, "Dr. Park has observed Mr. Carter and Aisha working together extensively. She can speak to the nature of their relationship and Mr. Carter's supportive role." Judge Phillips allowed the testimony but warned it should address custody, not science. Dr. Park proved compelling. As a respected academic with no financial stake, her assessment carried weight. "What I've observed between Jamal and Aisha is extraordinary," she testified. "He doesn't push her to work on her projects. He creates space for her curiosity to flourish. He advocates for her recognition rather than seeking credit. Most importantly, I've seen a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine care." When Victoria Bennett suggested Dr. Park was observing a performance by a manipulative adult, Park's response was blistering. In 23 years of academia, I've seen adults exploit talented children. This is the opposite. Jamal protects Aisha's interests, often at significant cost to himself. If exploitation were his goal, he would have accepted lucrative offers to sell her technology without her involvement. The courtroom tensed when Sarah called Aisha to testify. Judge Phillips seemed reluctant, but Sarah argued that at 12, Aisha's perspective should be considered. When Aisha entered, she appeared small in the formal setting, wearing her best but worn clothes, carefully pressed. She sat in the witness chair, feet barely touching the floor, but her posture was straight, her gaze direct. The judge spoke condescendingly, using simplified language. Now, Aisha, do you know the difference between the truth and a lie? She looked at him steadily. Yes, Your Honor. The truth conforms to reality or fact. A lie is a deliberate misrepresentation of reality or fact. Her sophisticated answer unsettled him. Victoria Bennett's questioning tried to lead Aisha to admit Jamal forced her to work long hours, limited her childhood activities, or pressured her to succeed for his benefit. Aisha dismantled each suggestion with clarity. Jamal never forces me to work on my equations, she explained. Before I met him, I solved them under bridges and in shelter bathrooms because no one understood why it mattered to me. He's the first person since my grandmother who doesn't think I'm weird for loving math and science. Asked about their living conditions, Aisha was direct. I lived in a shelter before, sometimes on the street when there weren't beds. Our apartment has heat, running water, and food in the refrigerator. Most importantly, it has safety and respect. The most powerful moment came when Judge Phillips asked why she wanted to stay with Jamal, rather than a traditional family offering material advantages. Aisha considered carefully. Before Jamal found me, people saw two things: a problem to solve or a project to complete. Foster families wanted to fix me. Teachers wanted to skip me ahead or hold me back because I didn't fit their systems. Social workers wanted to categorize me. She paused. Jamal was the first person who saw me, not as a case file, test score, or burden. He saw Aisha and showed me that being different doesn't mean being less valuable. She pulled out a folded paper. I brought this to show what we're working on. It's not just a science project. It's a way to make clean energy available to people who can't afford it. Jamal could have sold my idea to rich companies, but he's helping me develop it to help communities like ours. Judge Phillips examined the paper, confused by the equations. Young lady, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this courtroom isn't equipped to evaluate scientific innovations. We're here to determine your best interests regarding custody. Aisha's response was forceful. My best interest is to live with someone who believes in me, who stays up late helping me work through problems instead of telling me to act normal, who teaches me my mind is a gift, not a disorder. She looked at the judge. I've been in the system. I know what happens to kids like me who don't fit. We get medicated, separated from what we love, and taught to be less to make others comfortable. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Despite the testimony, Judge Phillips seemed unmoved. After a recess, he returned with his ruling. While I acknowledge the apparent bond between Mr. Carter and Aisha Brooks, I must prioritize stability and conventional developmental considerations. Therefore, I am granting temporary custody to the Department of Children and Families while a more suitable permanent placement is identified. He continued with bureaucratic details, but Jamal barely heard through the roaring in his ears. Aisha's face crumpled, though she fought to maintain composure. As court officers moved to escort her out, she broke away and ran to Jamal, throwing her arms around him. "Don't let them take me," she whispered fiercely. "We're not finished." As they were pulled apart, she pressed a folded paper into his hand. Social workers led her away, her face turning back toward him until she disappeared through the doors. Outside, community supporters expressed outrage, some offering to appeal or hide Aisha. Jamal knew these would worsen things, so he thanked them but insisted on working within the system. Only at home did he unfold Aisha's paper. It wasn't an equation but an alphanumeric code with instructions for accessing a hidden cloud storage account she'd created secretly. The note concluded, "They can't take what they can't find." The account contained everything: backups of her research, notes on their prototype's construction details, and video documentation Aisha had recorded using a laptop camera. The videos proved the innovations were hers, capturing her explaining complex concepts in her own words at various stages. Most valuable was a folder labeled Contingency, containing refined equations and alternative designs she'd worked on, always preparing for the worst. Aisha had ensured her work couldn't be stolen or suppressed. Armed with this, Jamal threw himself into completing a new prototype. By day, he attended supervised visits with Aisha, bringing math puzzles and science magazines deemed educational. Their conversations were superficial, aware of monitoring, but Aisha hid messages in numerical patterns, conveying insights about her temporary foster placement or prototype development. At night, Jamal worked tirelessly, racing against eviction, and the court's 90-day timeline for Aisha's permanent placement. The community rallied. Jamal Washington organized protests at the courthouse and social services offices, keeping public attention. Dr. Park provided access to testing equipment through personal connections, avoiding university channels. Neighbors brought meals, recognizing Jamal often forgot to eat. Sarah Rodriguez became personally invested, researching precedents involving gifted children and custodial rights. She discovered Victor Langston had undisclosed business connections to Judge Phillips through jointly owned investment properties, a conflict of interest that should have been declared. 3 weeks after Aisha's removal, Jamal received an anonymous package with a USB drive and a note, "For Justice," or. The drive contained recordings of Victor Langston with officials, including Heather Davis, discussing how to frame the custody evaluation to ensure Aisha's removal. Most damning was a conversation with Gerald Hoffman from Sunlight Energy. "Once the custody issue is resolved," Victor said, "acquiring the technology will be simple. The new guardian will have legal authority over the child's intellectual property. We'll offer a nominal scholarship fund that looks generous but costs a fraction of the technology's value." Hoffman replied, "Perfect. We either shelve it to protect our solar investments or roll it out slowly to maximize profit. Either way, the Carter problem disappears and the market stays stable." Jamal took the recordings to Sarah, who had them authenticated. Though possibly inadmissible due to consent laws, they provided leads for investigation. Sarah filed motions alleging judicial misconduct, corruption in custody proceedings, and corporate conspiracy to separate Aisha from Jamal for financial gain. The allegations triggered a Judicial Ethics Committee review and a state attorney general's investigation into corporate corruption. With the custody case paused, Jamal focused on the prototype, using Aisha's refined designs. He worked around the clock, sleeping only when necessary. The eviction process stalled, possibly due to community pressure on the landlord giving him time. 40 days after the hearing, Jamal finished the new prototype. Unlike the earlier version, it was elegantly designed, thoroughly documented, and functioned at 70% higher efficiency than industry standards, using existing technologies and supply chains. If implemented, it could reduce solar energy costs, making it accessible to underserved communities. Jamal contacted a respected science journalist who'd covered renewable energy with nuance. After signing non-disclosure agreements, the journalist brought independent experts to verify the prototype's performance. Their astonishment was captured on video, providing credible validation. With the prototype verified and documentation complete, Jamal organized a press conference at the Roxbury Community Center. Major technology publications and mainstream news outlets attended, drawn by rumors of a breakthrough from an unlikely source. Jamal Washington introduced Jamal Carter, who stood with confidence despite exhaustion. "What I'm about to show you represents not just a technological breakthrough, but a challenge to assumptions about who can innovate and under what circumstances," he began. He explained Aisha's background, their journey, and the systematic attempts to separate them and appropriate her work. Then he unveiled the prototype, demonstrating its functionality and presenting independent verification results. This technology was created by a 12-year-old girl whom the system has repeatedly failed, he concluded, a child whose brilliant mind has been dismissed because of her race, economic circumstances, and unconventional thinking. Today we're demonstrating what becomes possible when we recognize and nurture talent wherever we find it. The press conference created a sensation. Video clips spread online with attention to Jamal's emphasis that Aisha would be the primary patent holder, with significant revenue dedicated to STEM education in underserved communities. Public opinion, divided during the custody proceedings, shifted as people responded to the David versus Goliath narrative of a homeless girl and her guardian fighting corporate giants. The timing was perfect. The next day, the Judicial Ethics Committee announced preliminary findings identifying concerns about Judge Phillips's handling of the case and his undisclosed connections. The State Attorney General's office issued subpoenas to Langston, Innovations in Sunlight Energy for corporate conspiracy and corruption. The family court reopened the custody case with a new judge. Heather Davis was removed following evidence of bias. A new social worker conducted a fresh evaluation, focusing on Jamal and Aisha's emotional bond rather than material circumstances. Community members provided testimonials about Jamal's dedication, and Dr. Park submitted a detailed assessment of their supportive relationship. Aisha's temporary foster parents, a middle-aged couple hoping to adopt her, came forward with a surprising statement. In the 7 weeks Aisha has been with us, she has mentioned Jamal in every conversation, they wrote. It's clear she has found her person, her advocate, her family. While we would have been honored to parent her, we believe she already has the parent she needs. Their willingness to prioritize Aisha's well-being impressed the new judge, Judge Sophia Washington, known for considering children's best interests beyond conventional metrics, scheduled an emergency hearing. This court is troubled by the irregularities in the previous proceedings, she stated. Today, we will focus on what serves Aisha Brooks's best interests without prejudice or preconception. Unlike the previous hearing, this one centered Aisha's voice. Judge Washington spoke to her as an intelligent young person, not a helpless child. Aisha, in your own words, where do you feel most safe, supported, and able to thrive? Aisha's answer was immediate. With Jamal. He's the only person who has seen all of me, not just my brain, potential, or problems, and wanted to protect all those parts equally. Asked about their scientific collaboration, Aisha explained how Jamal ensured she received credit, protected her from exploitation, and taught her that her ideas had value beyond profit.
He could have taken my work and become rich again, she said. Instead, he worked 3 jobs and slept 4 hours a night to help me build something that could help people like us. That's not exploitation. That's believing in me when
no one else would. At the hearing's conclusion, Judge Washington ruled, the purpose of our foster care system is not to find perfect homes with ideal financial circumstances. Its purpose is to place children in environments where they can be safe, loved, and supported in becoming their full selves. The evidence demonstrates conclusively that Jamal Carter provides exactly such an environment for Aisha Brooks. She granted Jamal full legal guardianship, with a path to adoption if they chose it. The courtroom erupted in applause as Aisha rushed to Jamal, their tearful reunion capturing everyone's hearts. In the following weeks, the legal consequences unfolded. Victor Langston faced federal charges for corruption and espionage. Gerald Hoffman resigned from Sunlight Energy as the company distanced itself from the scandal. Judge Phillips was removed from the bench pending investigation. The patent application for Aisha's technology proceeded, listing her as primary inventor and Jamal as secondary contributor. Multiple companies expressed interest in licensing it legitimately, providing their first significant income since Jamal's collapse. Rather than keeping the profits, they established the Brooks Carter Foundation with 3 missions: providing equal access to their energy technology in underserved communities, supporting young innovators from marginalized backgrounds, and reforming systems like foster care and intellectual property protection, Their prototype became the foundation for a revolutionary solar energy approach, implemented at lower cost and higher efficiency. The first installation was at the Roxbury Community Center, providing free electricity and reducing operating costs. Similar systems were deployed at homeless shelters, public schools in low-income neighborhoods, and community facilities across the city. Aisha's story spread, earning invitations to speak at schools, universities, and conferences. Initially hesitant, she embraced the opportunity to inspire young people, particularly girls of color in STEM. At each appearance, she insisted Jamal stand beside her, acknowledging his role. Social workers who doubted Jamal began using their case as a training example about recognizing bias and looking beyond conventional stability metrics. Heather Davis, after her removal, issued a public apology, acknowledging that prejudice had clouded her judgment. For Jamal and Aisha, the greatest triumph wasn't the technology, recognition, or vindication. It was the quiet moments in their new, modest apartment in a safer building, with space for Aisha's own room and a dedicated workspace. It was knowing they'd created a family that defied conventional definitions, but fulfilled its most important function: unconditional support, respect, and love. They'd proven genius could emerge from unlikely circumstances, and that second chances sometimes came in unexpected forms. On a bright September morning, Jamal and Aisha stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by friends and supporters who'd become extended family. The adoption ceremony had been brief but profound, formally recognizing their bond forged through extraordinary challenges. Judge Sophia Washington broke protocol to join them outside, shaking Jamal's hand. In 23 years on the bench, few cases have given me as much satisfaction as this one, she said quietly. You've both shown remarkable courage. Aisha, now 13, stood tall beside her official father, wearing a new blue dress. The past year had transformed her. She'd grown 3 inches, gained healthy weight, and carried herself with confidence born of security. Her smile, once rare, was now frequent and genuine. Jamal placed his arm around her shoulders as they posed for photographs, still amazed by their journey. From his financial ruin and her homelessness, they'd built something remarkable. A family, a groundbreaking technology, and a foundation changing lives. The Brooks Carter Foundation grew beyond expectations. What began as a modest initiative expanded into a multifaceted organization addressing systemic barriers in STEM education and foster care. They partnered with community colleges for scholarships, established mentorship networks, and funded legal advocacy for foster children's rights. Victor Langston's legal troubles mounted, and a portion of his plea deal's financial penalties ironically funded programs for young innovators he'd tried to exploit. The energy technology exceeded projections. After testing and certification, it was licensed to manufacturers with conditions ensuring affordability and accessibility. Agreements prioritized implementation in regions with limited energy infrastructure and low-income communities, confounding industry executives but delivering undeniable social impact. Communities with energy poverty saw transformative benefits, from improved education with reliable school electricity to economic opportunities in previously constrained regions. Aisha's school situation improved dramatically. Multiple prestigious institutions offered scholarships, but they chose a progressive school with a personalized curriculum, allowing her to advance in STEM while developing socially with peers. The school created a program around her talents, with safeguards against exploitation and regular check-ins for her emotional well-being. As they left the courthouse for a celebration at the foundation headquarters, they passed a mural on the Roxbury Community Center, depicting their journey. From Aisha solving equations under a bridge to their courtroom victory, ending with solar panels bringing light to a diverse community. The artist captured their story with accuracy and compassion, avoiding early media sensationalism. At the foundation, Jamal Washington had organized a gathering focused on their work's impact. Photographs of community installations, letters from children benefiting from educational programs, and prototypes of new applications by young innovators they supported. Dr. Park, now a formal foundation advisor, had spoken out about institutional racism in academic research, using their case as a catalyst for necessary conversations. Aisha pulled Jamal aside, extracting a page of equations from her notebook. This is an adaptation of my energy conversion principle that could revolutionize transportation, she said. Electric vehicles have limitations in range and charging time, but this configuration could double efficiency while reducing battery size. Jamal studied the equations, recognizing their brilliance. This could be even bigger than the first breakthrough. Aisha nodded. But this time, I want to do it differently. Open source the core technology. Create development collectives in communities like ours. Ensure benefits are distributed, not concentrated. She looked at him. I've been thinking about what you said that night when I wanted to give up. How? This isn't just about technology, but about who gets to be an innovator. I want to change that equation too. Jamal smiled, feeling profound pride in the person she was becoming. The world wasn't ready for us before, he said. Let's make sure they're ready this time. Together they rejoined the celebration, not as the disgraced financier and homeless girl they'd been, but as father and daughter, innovators and advocates, living proof that genius and second chances could emerge from unexpected places. Their story had become a challenge to systems discounting potential based on race, class, or expectations. A new equation for possibility that would yield solutions long after their initial breakthrough.